Welcome to the 2009 Fusion Podcast, presented to you by the Oregon Ministry Network. Fusion, a conference for next-generation ministry leaders, took place November 12th through 14th at the Kaiser Renaissance Inn and Conference Center. The following workshop, entitled Ministering to Children in Loss and Grief, was led by Darren Daugherty.
Thanks for coming. I've been up since 4 a.m. preparing for... No, I have been up since 4 a.m., but not preparing for this. I usually get up pretty early in the Central Time Zone, which... around 6 a.m. So waking up at 4 a.m. and wondering what I should do with my life this morning, I graded about 10 research papers. No, 8 10-page papers. That's what it was. That is probably, for me personally, the least favorite part of teaching in a college. Except this class is a graduate class, so the papers were all good and enjoyable. Undergrad, not always so much, But we have a master's degree in children and family ministry, and it's our second year in that. And so we've had some great students, children's pastors, really from all over the country, and I think actually a children's missionary too, in another part of the world. But let's pray. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to share together. And help me, Lord, to cover those things that will be helpful for the people here. Thank you, Lord, for the privilege to minister to kids and especially ones who are hurting, that we could extend your love and your hands to them. In Jesus' name, amen. Garland gave that nice plug for me last night. When I did my doctoral dissertation, I have a PhD in family studies. I chose to do it on what is it like to lose a parent at a young age and live with the absence of that parent. And so I interviewed adults who had lost a parent as a child or in their early teens. And 40 people are in this book. And what I had to do is come up with what are the main themes that's common throughout all 40 of their lives. And after I graduated, I had to keep myself out of it and keep my own story out of it and keep proving to my advisor, no, I'm not tainting this, I'm staying out of it. But then after I was all done with it and graduated, I could do whatever I wanted with it. So then I put my own story in here too and made it into a trade book. And last year I finally got over the the inhibition of, I really shouldn't require my own books for my classes. That's kind of arrogant, isn't it? But I got over that last year, and I started requiring it for one of my classes. So, because we have a couple classes on helping children through challenging issues. So, anyway, that's available out there for, it says $12, but let's say $10, because then I can take less home on the airplane. I have a very small suitcase that was 45 pounds to bring it here, because if you were here the first night, it had cereal boxes in it, has poker chips in it, photo album, and then a lot of the Southwestern stuff out there. Barely any clothes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thanks, Frank. When I was a child, I went to church with my mom, my grandparents. I have fond memories of my grandparents, who were Italian immigrants, having a passion for God that has really been unmatched in my life. To hear my grandfather in his broken English speak about his love for the Lord, because they came to America as Roman Catholics. And actually, they were disowned by family members who they came with, brothers and sisters. They came all that way. They were disowned by them when my grandparents came to Christ in a personal way and left the Catholic Church. And it was really hard for them, but they didn't lose that passion for God, and it was just wonderful. In fact, my grandfather opened a barber shop attached to their house, not so much as a job, but as a way to witness. He always said a sermon and a haircut for 50 cents. And he had them trapped in that chair, and he would witness to them. And as us kids got older, we realized, he really isn't very good at this haircutting thing. and cost cutters became bigger in our lives and things. Yeah, but anyway, it was a ministry for him. And so I watched that passion in his life, in their lives, but there was something missing. My dad was not a Christian. And so I looked up to him as a kid. I wanted to be like him, but I knew that there was something different about him because at a young age, I accepted Christ at a kids' crusade in our church when I was 5 years old. And I understood what it meant to serve God. I understood many, many Bible stories. When I was 10 years old, my dad discovered some lumps around his waist. He had to go to the doctor, get those checked out. And that's when we discovered that he had lymphoma, a form of cancer. He was a bricklayer, pretty strong, blue-collar, tough guy, and was really shaken by the fact that he now had something he couldn't control. I watched him become a more angry person. He spent longer times at the bar on the way home from work. A couple times I thought he was going to get in fights with neighbors. His patience was just gone. And this was all due to the fact that he had just been diagnosed with cancer. Well, I came home from school one day, and shortly after he was diagnosed, and I was looking around the house, and it was kind of one of those moments where, as a kid, you have those moments where you're pretty sure you missed the rapture because there's nobody around. And so I couldn't find my mother anywhere. I thought maybe I had missed the rapture. But I found her quietly in her bedroom on the phone, knelt down by the bed, and tears running down her face. And I'm 10 years old. I begin thinking the worst. I kneeled down by the bed across from her, facing her, and I started crying too. Think, well, he was just diagnosed. What happened? How could he be dead already? And I'm crying, and she hangs up the phone, and I said, "Mom, what's wrong?" She said, "Daddy just gave his heart to Jesus." And I remember having a moment as a 10-year-old where the tears changed. I was still crying, but it was like I had this intellectual thought of, this is what it's like to cry tears of joy. I don't know if I've ever done that before. And I found myself crying because I knew what that meant. I knew that he was one of us now. He had come to Christ. And over the next few years, I actually, pretty immediately, our pastor did such a fabulous job of showing my dad what it was to be a spiritual leader in your home. And he would lead us in family devotions, which was kind of awkward because they were Bible stories that were new to him, but not too new to me. And so I would just have to keep my mouth shut and not correct him on certain things. But I remember the security that I felt that he was doing something that I observed was different than what he used to do. That he would pray and he'd read the Bible, and that spoke volumes to me. I watched him change his friends over the next couple of years. I watched him bringing people to Jesus, telling them about this newfound faith that he had found and this answer to life. And I really thought life would just go on like that, except the weekends. Weekends were very tough. He took his chemotherapy then. And during the week, he's just perfectly fine. Weekends were very bad. But the physical signs, he didn't lose his hair like most people do. And so it just felt like we'll just go on like this for a long time. Well, when I was 13, his blood count became very, very low, alarmingly low. And he had to go into the hospital for blood transfusion and so on. And really the doctors just couldn't keep up with how much blood they could put into him and how much blood his white blood cells were eating. And I stood by his hospital bed with my mother. It was on a Thursday night. And I had already welled up with tears just looking at physically what he had become in just a matter of 2 weeks. And how weak he looked, and wondering, could this really be happening? And I said, "Daddy, we're going home now." And he whispered something back, and we couldn't understand because he was so weak. And my mom and I got closer, and we said, "We're going home now." And he said, "I'm going home too." And it was almost like a flashback to 3 years before of mixed emotions. It was tears of sadness because I knew what he meant, but tears of joy, the fact that there was a hope in him that I loved seeing. I loved the fact that my dad knew that he was going to be with Jesus, and knowing that my grandparents were already there, or at least one of them was already there, and that he would see them too. And so the next morning he passed away, and I was so thankful for God and the faithfulness he showed. I could have gone a different direction. The grace of God, I just thank God that he just at times made it easy for me to keep loving him and trusting him and serving him, and I thank him for being with me. But I don't want it to make it sound like either that life was just easy without a dad, because it wasn't. And you know that. Whether you've experienced it or seen kids in your ministries, it's not easy. Well, I got to Bible college after my mom didn't remarry, still hasn't, and growing up without a dad. And I met this wonderful woman, this beautiful woman named Wendy, who... one of the first things as we started talking, she started talking about how she lost her dad in a car accident. And actually my wife, whose childhood was spent here in Oregon, and mostly in Grants Pass, when they had moved to Minnesota, her dad was killed in a car accident. So they were kind of new to the state and everything at that time. But anyway, we had this thing in common, and that's my wife, Wendy. And it was one of those things that drew us together right away, finding someone who had shared a similar life experience. And so what God has done with that is that he has made us, maybe even, or at least given us a heightened sensitivity to hurting kids. We've been involved with Rural Family Kids Camp for a number of years. We, as I told you the first night, we are foster parents. The kids we have with us now are 11th, 12th, and 13th foster kids. And we've just called it our family, our ministry as a family. We have 3 kids of our own, 15, 13, and 9. And they understand this is what we do. This is one of our identities. This is a way that we serve the Lord. We use our family to show kids, to put photos into their photo albums, as I talked about the first night, and to minister to them. And so each kid is different. I teach, as I said, I teach 2 entire classes on this type of stuff. So how do I squeeze it all into one workshop is not an easy thing, because I would love to share with you one of the biggest issues that foster kids especially deal with is attachment disorders. And there are lots of kids sitting in your churches who deal with attachment needs. They did not attach early in life to a very caring figure, and maybe it got worse because they were moved around, or maybe like one of the little boys we just had in our home, one of the last ones we had, his mother just left him in the crib all the time. I mean, she was on drugs, and he lived in his crib. He played with his diaper. He smeared things on the wall. He was very malnourished. Couldn't walk, even though he was 2 years old. And it took us. We had him 18 months, and it took almost that whole time for him to attach to us as loving figures in his life. Someone who's really going to love him and care for him. And anyway, those foster kids, that group, there were 3 siblings in that group. Theirs was a beautiful ending, adopted by a beautiful Christian couple who couldn't have kids of their own. And so God has used us to kind of be a bridge to whatever's next in their lives. Sometimes it's a bridge to something wonderful and beautiful. Other times it's a bridge that hopefully will stay in their minds, because where they're going is maybe just as bad as where they were. We had 2 little boys all last summer, James and Bryson. They came to kids camps with us. We did kids camps on the East Coast, and everybody at the camp would love them. And they just were showered with so much love. And we just pray that all of those memories will stay with them, because what a judge decided to do was send them off with a distant relative who's a witch into Wiccan. And so, anyway, we've seen tragedies, we've seen good things come out of it, but hopefully God will use what we've done. That's kind of where our heart is. That's I told you on the first night, I thank God for the people in my life too that would do the little things. The 7th grade music teacher, the guys on the church softball team, the people that would walk up to me in church who had nothing to do with the youth group I was a part of, but just walk up to me and shake my hand and say, "We're glad you're part of this church." An older person. In fact, I've made it a point to go back and thank those people and tell them, you probably had no idea how much just your handshake meant to me. It was great to be in my youth group, But the people that really put the pictures into my life and gave me a hope to go on, to be secure, to feel, yes, I'm going to go on and go into the ministry, it was really the adults that I had seen and observed. Because kids in your ministries, if they're missing something big, they're keen to that item, whether it's a sibling or a parent or whatever. They're watching for models. And they're watching you. They're watching you very closely. And I'm going to rush through some things if you were in here yesterday. Remember, get one of my cards on the table out here. Go to my website. There's an article or two on there about yesterday's topic, family ministry. All of the ideas that I shared with you are in an article on my website. And also today, if I'm going way too fast for you, remember, go to my website, and there's an article that I wrote for Christian Counseling Today on this topic that kind of sums it all up. All right. Well, a baby giraffe has an interesting entrance into the world. See, a giraffe does not sleep on the ground. A giraffe sleeps standing up. A giraffe spends its life standing up. So, when a baby giraffe is born, its first entrance to the world, you're already getting a picture, is a big thud hitting the ground as an entrance to the world. And if that's not bad enough, that baby giraffe is required to walk right away. The mother does not wait very long. And if that giraffe cannot walk, the mother giraffe takes her rear leg and gives it a kick and tumbles it over, so hopefully it'll land on its feet and stand up for its own. So the first entrance is to fall from at least 10 feet, and then to be kicked by its mother how many times. And that's a humorous look at the animal kingdom. But when I heard that, I thought, wow, how many kids, they're in the first stages of life, and they've gone through something that kids shouldn't go through, whether that's the death of a parent or an absence of a parent or parents on drugs that don't care about them or whatever. Whatever it is, so many kids enter life already behind everyone else because they've experienced something so difficult. There are so many types of loss. There's loss of control. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because when somebody goes through a loss, especially a kid, there's more than just the loss of that thing or that person. There's loss of control. There's the types of losses that break normalcy. I shouldn't have to go through this as a kid. I shouldn't lose a parent. My parents shouldn't get divorced because look at all the other kids that their parents didn't get divorced. It's this isn't normal and I don't want it, a kid will feel. That violate moral expectations. A dad shouldn't walk out on his family. I should be with my mom. Why am I in my fourth foster home? This is wrong. What about these why did other kids not have to go through this? Disenfranchised losses. Sometimes a loss can propel people into a whole different socioeconomic class. Or moving them from one place to another. Loss overload. Just the idea that as I said earlier, there isn't just one type of loss with a loss. There's always more than one connected to the loss of something or someone. Material losses, especially if it's a loss of a father or a husband who had the main job in the family. Big material loss there. Relationship loss. As we've had our foster kids at times just open up their hearts at one of those real vulnerable moments and say, why did my mom love drugs more than me? Why won't I ever be with her again? Why do other kids get to have their mom with them their whole life? That loss of a relationship, they realize they're probably never going to have it. Loss of health, of course, when it comes to a disease or so on. The loss of a role in your life, it really goes along with relationship, losing a parental role, etc. Systemic loss, the kinds of losses that change an entire family structure. Again, the loss of a parent is one of those things where now you are a single parent family. That's very different than a two-parent family in many, many ways. And the worst being spiritual loss, of course, if facing the fact that if you did lose someone, what if they didn't know the Lord? What a tragedy. And really, one of those hopes that I try to instill into kids that I've dealt with and lost, that you need to stay faithful. Someday you'll die too, but to serve the Lord, to be faithful, and especially if that parent was a Christian, someday you'll see them again. But the biggest one, the one that I think that has the greatest impact, and it's kind of it's a bigger word, intrapsychic loss, and what that really means is shattered dreams, an altered future, loss of what might have or should have been. Everybody has dreams. You ask kids, what are you going to be when you grow up? And, it's firemen and policemen and those kinds of things. And those change over time. But one of the things in the back of their minds is not, when I grow up, I'm going to lose a parent in my teen years, or my parents are going to get divorced. Because those kinds of things aren't supposed to happen. I'm supposed to grow up with this family. I'm supposed to stay with my real parents, or however they put it, or my biological parents. But this kind of loss comes along and shatters the dreams. It's gone. Like the video clip I showed you on the first night of Derek Redmond. Shattered dreams. His second try at the Olympics. That was his last try at the Olympics. He wasn't going to be going back again. He was favored the first time in 1984. He was favored in 1988, and then in 1992. Neither time it happened. Loss of dreams. 1.5 million people experienced the death of a parent by age 15. And let me make it clear again, a lot of the principles that I found in the lives of the people I interviewed for my book, as well as the principles I'm sharing today, aren't just for the death of a parent. I hope you see the value in, even if children have gone through the divorce of their parents or some other type of loss, even the loss of a grandparent. Today, only about 50% of children will spend their entire childhood in an intact family, in a two-parent family. I think of what a powerful illustration. Bo Jackson, back in the early 90s, late 80s, what a sports hero. Great in two professional sports, baseball and football. Won the most valuable player in the All-Star game for Major League Baseball, and won the rushing title for running yards as a running back. And somebody interviewed him for Sports Illustrated and said, "Bo, you've got it all. Unlike anyone else, you are great in two sports. You've got the fame, you've got the money." He said, "What more could there be?" And he said, "Actually, I have a big hole in my life, a big hole in my heart." He said, "Not once has my father watched me play a sport. He's alive. I send him tickets. I send him plane tickets. But not once has he ever been interested to see me." He said, "So here I am, Bo Jackson. Supposedly I have everything that people want, but I have this great emptiness inside." And I thought, what a powerful illustration for a lot of different things. A lot of kids do go through having a distant parent like that will never be part of their lives. But how important the role of a loving parent is, or even a substitute. I know that he also spoke fondly of the coaches in his life that had impacted him. Loss and grief are different, and pretty soon I'm going to skip some slides very quickly, but let me make sure I cover this one. Loss is the experience or state of being deprived. Usually permanent. It can be less obvious. And what I mean by that is I could look around the room right now, and I don't see loss. Because I can't see what you've been through. You could look through a crowd of kids, and you don't know the losses that they've experienced. We don't see those things. And one of those assumptions we make is that they'll get over it. Well, if it's a loss, it's gone. It's even if it's in a family where a separation has happened with the parents, and they come back together a year later, that year is still lost. There's still something gone, and there's the memory of goneness or absence. And so, again, it can be less obvious because it's not grief; it's just the loss. Now, grief is a response to loss. We can see grief because it comes out in tears and depression, things like that. And there are many different ways people look at it. The old way to look at grief was steps. You go through this step, and 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 you're done. But the truth is, loss isn't like that. Because those of you who have gone through some type of loss, you know that sometimes it comes back up. And you revisit one of those steps. So I like the idea of a wheel, actually. A wheel with spokes, or the lug nuts on a tire, on a wheel on a car. That sometimes it's that sense of sadness. Another time it's a sense of anger. Another time it might be just a hopelessness. And it's really a revisiting of things, and not in a certain pattern either. And so a kid who has just lost a parent or a grandparent or whatever can sit in your kids' church and act like nothing's wrong because they're not really visiting a spoke on that wheel. They're in between, but everybody around them feels like, oh, what's wrong with him? He should be sad, or he should. He must be over it. No, it's just maybe he's in between things right now. I like the illustration of a tide too. That with grief, it's like the tide of the sea, the surf of the sea, a big wave that hits you unexpectedly. You could be going about a normal day, and all of a sudden, just a fleeting memory of this person or that person hits you. I think of times even as a teenager when I would at track meets and sporting events that I would be a part of, and watch a kid run off the track and his dad hugs him, and those type of things that triggers. I don't have that. Grief may subside. Grief can be better handled, but grief is unpredictable. I had a strange experience as a 10-year-old, and I think it was because the diagnosis of my dad having lymphoma. We had gone on a great family vacation, and never did we talk about my dad's lymphoma, never was it an issue. But when we got home, I'd be sitting in second or third grade. 10. Fourth or fifth. Yeah, that's right, good. Fourth or fifth grade. And I just have tears coming down my face. And the teacher would stop, and she'd come talk to me, pull me aside, and she'd say, "What's wrong?" And I was having this feeling of, we had this great family vacation. What if my dad really does die someday? What if we don't have vacations like that again? And even though I told you earlier I had this sense that life would keep going on, I also had, maybe it was the Lord preparing me for the future, of course, nothing had even happened yet, and I would get so frustrated with myself of why am I being sad, and why am I crying, why am I making a scene of something that didn't even happen, and I wish I could just turn it off. But kids can't just turn it off, and adults for that matter, we can't always just turn it off. This is a great quote by an instructor I had in my doctoral program. "Grief is one of our most common of life experiences. Grief is a part of life. Grief lingers. It hangs around like a homeless dog, an anticipated guest, or a guest is coming by, but you know not when." I think of how a lot of people want others to get over what their loss is or their grief because it makes them uncomfortable. We don't know what to say, we don't know what to do, but yet, how do we be of help? How can we really love and help a kid who's having a tough time? First of all, we need to realize grief is like an iceberg, or our loss is like an iceberg. We see things on the surface that they go through, but all of you know that the biggest part of an iceberg is under the surface. And all of the things that go along with that loss, grief, feelings, all the changes in their life, the absence, permanence, all of these, the death of dreams, all of these things that are under the surface, that, again, people just move on with their lives and just hope that that kid has moved on and they're okay now. But really, there's stuff under the surface for years and years. How children might grieve seeing all the other moms and dads at an event. making a card or gift for Mother's Day. As children's pastors, be careful the way you handle those types of holidays. Tell your Sunday school teachers too. You don't just make the assumption that every kid could make a Mother's Day card. Make sure you know the kids well enough to be able to say, well, we're going to make a card for moms and that great lady who's taking care of you right now, or however you say it, to not ostracize the child who already has this loss of a mom in their life, who already has this great absence that they're embarrassed about. So we need to be careful about those things. Hearing about the illness of another parent. Good memories can be triggers, and as well as bad memories. Moving from a house that holds memories. One of the mistakes that a parent will do after a big loss is they want to start over, so they move. And what that is for the child often is another loss. They're leaving the place where all of those memories were, where all the memories happened, and now it's another loss. An older sibling moving away. I was really touched by a woman in my book named Betty. I forget. I have aliases for everyone. I don't remember what her alias is in there. But her original name was Betty. In her 70s. And actually getting choked up as she was telling me about the losses in her life. She lost her mom when she was 1 year old. And not having a mom in her life, was a big loss and an absence. But she had an older sister that became a pseudo-mom. And I guess I didn't expect to hear it this way, and I didn't expect this 70-some-year-old woman to break down. But she said when her sister went off to college was the biggest loss she had ever experienced, because it was her mom choosing to leave. It was her mom choosing to go away. Having lost her mom when she was 1, she had no memories of her, nothing she could really hold on to. But when her sister left, that was huge. And sometimes you watch the kids in your ministries. If they have a sibling leave, and that sibling was there during something tragic, that's a big time. That's a time when they really need some extra care, some extra ministry in their lives. Holidays, any type of celebration, growth spurts, going through growth spurts in life, to have that parent there or that caring person in their lives. People always say, holidays, it's family time. Well, if your family's been changed in a very tragic way, holidays are that much tougher. And dreams at night, just I remember a couple of years after my dad was died, having a dream that he had really just been away somewhere, and going to my mom's room and saying, "Where's Daddy?" And she just didn't know what to say. She doesn't want to say he's been dead for 2-3 years, but then I just kind of snapped out of it and said, and actually that doesn't make for a very good day ahead, because if you spent part of the night thinking and having this hope, and again, we never know what a kid carries into the Rangers, Missionettes, JBQ. We don't know what they carry into that room with them. A dream the night before, or some issue in their lives. I love the fact that the church that we attend, they understand the kids that we bring. And there's almost like an extra love shown to the foster kids, because they know that the baggage that these kids are carrying, they need a little extra. They need some extra attention in their lives. Of course, children grieve anytime, anywhere, mostly in safe settings. They go in and out of grief. They know their limits. Sometimes kids will regress. They go backwards. Start acting like a baby. And it can be annoying, it can be frustrating, but yet it's their way to cope. Acting out, sometimes postponing. A man interviewed again in my book. He lost his mom when he was, I think, 12 years old. His mom was the mom of the neighborhood. And so when she died, he was comforting all his friends. And he said it was like 2 to 3 months later when the reality hit him. And he just went into a deep depression, didn't want to get out of bed. And he had postponed it. He really didn't even think about it. He's comforting all of his friends. And sometimes kids will do that. They'll just postpone it. I remember, and we need to be very careful to not force kids to grieve in ways that we think they should grieve. I remember being chewed out. I mean, I had it with crying and all this at my dad's funeral, and me and a few of my cousins were in a side room throwing paper airplanes, and a relative came in there and chewed us out of how inappropriate that was, and I'm thinking, it's my dad. I'll cry however I want to. I didn't say this. Later I felt like I should have. I'll cry however I want to. I'm not going to grieve the way you think I should grieve. And adults do that all the time to kids. I'll get back to that in a second. Observing others. I had a person interviewed who had lost her mom when she was 8 or 9 years old. She was laying in the bed next to her mom when she heard her mom's pacemaker just tick off and her mom slip into eternity. And she said, it's moments she'll never forget. But she was kind of afraid to stand out, so she would only cry when she saw her sisters cry, because then she felt like that's the time I can cry. And if her sisters were cried a lot, then she would cry a lot at that time too. Always observing how other people handle it. Emotional, physical reactions, and really throughout childhood, it goes on. Some of the worst things we can do is use euphemisms. Grandpa's sleeping. All that does is make a child afraid to go to sleep. Or Grandpa's with Jesus, or Jesus took Grandpa. Who's this? Do I really want to serve this Jesus? He's taking my family members away. Encouraging denial. People, and some of these things come from good-natured, caring people who say, they want the best for that child, and they say, cheer up. Oh, come on, cheer up. Well, you know what? That child needs to grieve now. Telling them to cheer up, all that does is make them feel bad for their grief and feel like they're doing something wrong. So don't encourage denial. Don't tell them to cheer up when that's the last thing they need to do right now. They need to work through it. Ignoring their grief. I think it happens less today, but in the past, the majority of people that I spoke to said that the biggest frustration in the loss they went through is that adults just ignored it. Adults went on with their crying and their grief and just felt like, well, the kids are resilient, they'll bounce back. Pressuring the child to talk. This is one of those things you'd love as a children's pastor. You'd love for them to stand up there 15 years from now and giving a testimony and say, I remember that one time when Pastor so-and-so was talking with me and I let it all out and everything was better. And, pressuring them into that kind of moment does not help them at all. But for you to be available, I'll get to that in the next slide. Working towards a big tell-all session, as I already said. Assuming children feel and experience the same. Twin boys lost their dad in their later elementary years. Experienced the loss in very different ways. In fact, even later in life, as I interviewed them, one of them had a large family with 5 kids because it was his dream to be a great dad. He lost his dad. He's going to be a great dad. The other one said, I won't risk putting my kids through the same pain, so I'm never going to have kids. And he has no kids, and that's what he did. In fact, a woman that I interviewed had the same thing. She even had an operation so that she wouldn't have kids in the future out of fear that she would someday leave them. Assume no grief in children that don't act sad. Don't do that. And assume that their loss will go away. These are some of the worst things you can do. One more comparison on how children experience or feel different. My wife and her brother. My wife, at the loss of her dad, was like mine, an opportunity to draw closer to God and trust in Him more. Her brother, and actually her mother, both said, if this is what God is like, then we don't need to serve Him anymore. And that was 20-some years ago, and my wife's mother and brother still are not serving the Lord. And how they came to experience different things, yet in the same household, don't understand everything of God's grace. We can't figure it all out. Some of the worst things you can say. And this isn't so bad, but I understand how you feel. Do you really Again, it's not so bad, but many times people don't want to hear this because they're saying, you don't understand. You don't know me. You don't know my feelings. And it's better to say, this must be really difficult. I can see that you're going through a very difficult time. Not, I understand how you feel. It could be worse. It's kind of silly that people would say that, but you can understand they want to make it better. But it could be worse. What, I lost both parents, or what, my whole family was murdered, or these types of things. That doesn't help a child at all. You're the man or woman of the house. You know what that tells a child? Your childhood is over. There will be no more fun. Remember how you looked at the adults in your life and you thought, "Why, man, the day I'm going to have to go to work and I'm going to have responsibility." Well, that day's come. Your childhood's over. Now you're one of those adults. That's how they take it. Or, as I said earlier, cheer up. If you need anything, let me know. Good, well-meaning people say this all the time. But a person in loss, a family in loss, is not going to come back to you for the most part. It's up to you, it's up to us to say, what can I do for you this week? What can I do for you right now? Can I take the kids? Can I do this right now or later this week to come back? I remember someone coming up to us, a deacon came up to my mother and said, we have $200 in benevolence. If you need it, come see us. She said, I'm not going to go ask for money. If they would have said, here's $200 in benevolence, that would have been a different story. I'll be over to pick up, this is one of my uncles. My dad's family, he's from an extremely dysfunctional family. I'll be over to pick up the fishing poles that your dad borrowed from me. That's all he had to say to me. That was his way to comfort me. I can laugh about it now, but I was just so irritated that he couldn't, show some kind of kindness. And this was the absolute worst. I was standing in the room, looking across the room at my mother, who's getting upset. She's talking to a woman. And right behind them is the casket where my dad is laying. And my mom is getting angry. I could see it. I make my way over to her as the woman walks away. And I said, "Mom, what's wrong?" She just said that your dad had hidden sin in his life, and that's why he wasn't healed. It took me years to get over that. It took me years to not wish things upon that woman who I would see in the grocery store and other places. Why would anyone say something like that? Someone who calls themselves a Christian. And so those kinds of things happen. And many times kids experience hurtful words in the loss, but usually it's from other kids. Other kids will say things, and it's really up to us to help them. And I'm just going to do a couple more slides and then open up for a couple questions. Make as few major changes as possible. That's more for the parents than for you, but a kid that goes through a major change in their life like this, they don't need to deal with more. Increase the level of predictability. Again, what some parents will do is they'll change everything if something happens to make the child's life better, but that really, it doesn't do that. They need more predictability. Make sure the child always knows where a parent is or how to reach him or her. If you happen to have kids in your ministry that lose a parent, or they're going to have a heightened awareness of, I only have one parent left. And if I lose that parent, then I'm an orphan. I have none. And so making sure that child and you always know where the other parent will be. Many times after a loss, a child will need to be reassured of that. Keep your word. They've gone through something. Many of the foster kids we have parents that have lied to them, promised them things over and over and over. And they don't even believe you. They don't even believe my wife and I the first 100 times we say it. But yet, we have to show them to earn their trust and keep our word. Be there. Be a presence in their lives. I don't remember if that school teacher, the music teacher, ever really tried to comfort me or say big, comforting things. But just the fact that he invited just me to pray with him before school and to read a couple verses of the Bible together before school, just his presence in my life spoke volumes. Protect them from hurtful words and teach them how to handle them. Kids say hurtful things. At least I have a mom or those foster kids. We've had to help foster kids deal with the comments that come from others. And don't assume that they have greatly matured. Let them have their childhood. Usually kids who go through some type of loss do seem more mature if they're serving the Lord and they're getting that handle on trusting God. There's just a maturity about them. But let them still be a kid. See, what happens in a family when there's a loss is the level of fun goes way down, because there's less people to have that fun or to organize that fun. And so some of you, I remember sometimes as a children's pastor getting really frustrated, thinking, am I just a program director? One more program, one more event, was it really that beneficial? But there are a lot of kids out there that the only real fun they're going to have is the fun that you provide. So it does meet a need, even though it might seem very shallow at times. And this is kind of the last thing I'll cover, and then we'll just talk. Some of the things, the best things you can do, prayer and encouragement. Just a simple, hey, I thought about you this week and prayed for you. You know what? That sounds so easy, that sounds so trite, but I think about how much those things meant to me, that somebody in the church foyer who knew that maybe I had, knew that I lost my dad or something, would just say, hey, I thought about you this week and I prayed for you. That was huge. That was volumes. They didn't have to try to make everything better. They didn't have to try to say special things. I knew what they meant. They meant, I know you lost your dad. I know it must not be easy. I hope you make it through. All of those things they were saying in, I prayed for you. Social activities. As I said earlier, there's a lack of moments of fun. Practical support. Especially when a girl loses a mom or some type of mother figure in her life, when it comes to shopping for school clothes and doing her hair and stuff like that. Another lady I interviewed in my book said that she visited an aunt, and the aunt took blackheads out of her earlobes or something like that. And she said that meant so much to her, because she said that's something a mother would do. And she said someone hadn't done anything motherly for me for a long time. And practical, maybe that's a new category of gross support, but but it meant a lot to her. Informational support. As you know, when it comes to single parent families especially, you have to communicate even more. Communicate more than just a flyer that goes home with the kids. A phone call, an email, whatever. Their lives are busier. Their lives are more hectic. Just your presence. Just your presence to be in their lives. My wife and I would do events just for kids from single parent or some type of situation where they had experienced a loss. We would have events just for them. We wouldn't announce it to everyone because we didn't want them to feel like, we don't want the other kids to say, oh, it's them or they're having, but we would just personally invite them and say, we're all going to go to watch Minnesota Twins or whatever, sporting events and things like that, just to spend time with them, be in their lives. Validational support. It's okay to cry. It's okay those times when you feel like crying to tell a kid, there might be times when you feel like just crying. And you know what? You'll be sitting in kids' church and you might feel like crying. I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not even going to call attention to it. If you need to cry, if you need to step out, whatever, it's okay. You can cry. Because sometimes it will hit you at a very unexpected time. Emotional support. Training your workers and everyone involved to love that child and care for that child. Each time we have a new foster kid, especially with certain issues, we have to go to their teachers and say, especially those with attachment. We had a little girl who, she's the type of little girl, if she's not cared for correctly, she'll be pregnant as soon as possible. She just has such a longing for the touch of a male. And we saw this at a Thanksgiving gathering with some family members. She had just come into our home. She's cuddly and loving us, the kind of kid that it's like, wow, this is like, she's letting us know we're meeting this great need in her life, and we felt so honored and privileged and bonded with her. But as soon as we got around a large group of people, she had nothing to do with us. She'd go from this guy to this guy to this guy to this guy. This is at 5 years old. She had a huge hole in her life. So we had to actually go to teachers and say, we want you to withhold your hugs because she needs to get that from us right now. But after a while, when she feels secure and more attached to us, then we'll open it back up. And I know that's a little bit off track there, but letting people in their lives know what they need. And some practical things: remember their birthdays, holidays, celebrations, and I know that sounds very morbid, the anniversary of the death or the anniversary of whatever happened. If you could keep a book or a file, this sounds, again, morbid, of tragedies or losses of certain kids that come to your church, if there's any way you could find out, that would be a valuable tool for you to have. Synagogues do this. Synagogues will publish the anniversary date of deaths that happened in the attenders' lives because they are making a point. This person or this family might be revisiting grief this week. And if you could remember those things, I had people do that in my life who just send me a note on December 5th and just say, hey, I thought about you today. And they didn't have to say anything else. Just they remembered that my dad died on that date and that date stands out on the calendar as big as any other date. And if you could remember those kinds of things, so practical and easy and really speaks volumes. I'm sorry, I talked too much, and I'm glad. I'm open for questions, and we're almost out of time.
Some people, if they're trying to not think about it, that could be offensive, so how do you...
Oh, but the healthy thing for them, well, they're going to think about it, and to know that you care. I mean, I would err on the side of just letting them know you love them and care about them. You don't have to say, this is the date, we know, just thought about you today. And they can take that however they want, you know. Yeah, Tamara.
Are there any warning signs, like when we would really be concerned as far as maybe there might need to be professional help or...
If a kid is not coming out of any of these stages, or going into a deeper depression, a great book that goes like a follow-up, It's Okay to Cry by H. Norman Wright. And he has a couple chapters in there about when does it go too far? When is a child really stuffing too much down inside? And how do we help them unstuff? Or to get them to a counselor? That's a great resource. It's a hard question for me to answer quickly, but we do have to watch for those things if they're staying in a stage too long.
Do you have book recommendations for children to read?
It's Okay to Cry is a good one for someone to read and then help the kids with questions. There are some children's books out, but I like the ones more for the adults than to help the child. And the last section, this is not a commercial, but the last section of each chapter, I put a list of things for the surviving parent to do and in the lives of their child, to remember and to talk to their child about. So those types of things I think are more helpful to, help adults help them rather than let a book do it. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
How about if they feel guilty, like they have to
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's so much of that. A problem with keeping the loss from them and not talking about it is that they fill in the blanks. And so a child who had a cold and sat on Grandpa's lap, but yet now is at Grandpa's funeral a week later, is making some conclusions that I probably made him sick. And so the importance is really for families to talk. And parents go the other way normally. It's a parental instinct to protect the child. So don't talk to them, but they really do need to. And on our end, as children's ministry people, really to encourage the parent talk to them. To make sure you're talking to your child about this. Make sure you're being honest and open and not using euphemisms or clouded language. So, does that answer? Okay. Well, I hope it was helpful and practical for you. I do feel honored to be able to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to the 2009 Fusion Podcast. For more information on the Oregon Ministry Network and our events, please visit our website at oregonag.org.